have two happy news. First of all, I hope you guys are noticing a change of video quality because I got a new camera. Okay, I bought a new camera. It's the first shoot with my new camera. So today's video might have me looking, I get an inclination to look at the monitor instead of the lens. So I might go back and forth. I'll get used to it really quickly. And the event results. Okay, all right. So I was very surprised at the number of people who signed up for the event. Thank you so much. Everybody who won, I will have the nicknames in the subtitle. I think there was one person who didn't want to be named. So there's the nameless person here. I had so much fun reading your answers for the nicknames and everything you had to say to me personally. I was really, really touched. I read it over and over again. I had so much fun reading all these creative entries. What killed me, my favorite, was mangoes. Oh my god. Surprisingly, more than one person submitted that. It's so creative. And it's so cute. I love mangoes, so it makes sense. I love it. But I don't think I can say it without giggling for at least 30 seconds. So sadly, I passed on that. There were a lot of people who suggested genies, which was also great. There was Gigi, which I really like because a lot of my friends, especially friends from other countries, they call me Gigi. So it's a nickname of mine for some of my friends. And I liked how it means support, noun and a verb in Korean. Jiji, it means to support. But it also means in baby talk. So here's a little Korean lesson. In baby talk, it means dirt, something dirty. So I passed on that too. And many people suggested something related to traveling. So in the end, it was down to travelers and sunshines. And I really couldn't decide between the two. I think both of them are great nicknames for you guys. But travelers in Korean, it means 여행자들. And sunshines in Korean means 햇살이들, which sounds a lot cuter. So I decided to go with sunshines. Yay! So from now on, all my videos will be starting with Hello Sunshines. So once again, thank you so much for submitting all your creative entries. This will not be the last subscriber giveaway. Let's get to today's topic. This topic was also suggested by one of my sunshines out there. A lot of people actually wanted to know my favorite books and for me to make a video on book recommendations. So here it is. I didn't get to bring all of them. I brought a few. See, I brought a few. But I didn't get to bring all of them because some of the books are really heavy. Today I spent about an hour trying to sort out the books that I was going to carry. Most of them are at home and some of them are in my office. And I left my favorite book in my office. Let's start with, but I will insert photo of the cover here. My favorite book of all time is Sophie's World by Yoshton Gardner. I got it as a present from my dad when I was in second grade. And ever since then, it has become my favorite book. It's a philosophy novel. It revolves around this girl, Sophie, and she keeps getting letters from this mysterious philosopher who gives philosophy lectures via letters. And it's a perfect combination of fiction and nonfiction. It's a great way to get acquainted with philosophy. It's one of those books that keeps you intrigued cover to cover. I'm not going to give away any spoilers for any of the books that I'm introducing today because I want you guys to find out for yourselves. A lot of, if not all, Gardner's books are like that, and I do recommend all the other books that he has written. Another of my favorite is the Christmas one. I really like it. And I actually pitched, because most of his books are translated into Korean, and the Christmas one wasn't. So I pitched the idea, translating that book, to a lot of publishers. They all turned me down because it was too minor. They said it was very seasonal. They think it will only sell around Christmas season, which in my opinion is super narrow-minded. As a Christmas lover, who reads Christmas books all around the year. I refuse to agree with that, but that was the majority opinion. But I did hear that a few years later, a children's book publisher translated it, like abbreviated children's version. And I had a really fun episode regarding my favorite book. When I was studying for college, I applied to 4 schools. I got into all of them. So I had an interview with all these schools. And when I was interviewing for English Lit major at Ewha University, there were 3 professors. And one of the interview questions was about my favorite book. So I talked about Sophie's World. And this professor, this one particular professor was nearly falling asleep. He could have been fully asleep. He was just like this, with his eyes closed. When I said Sophie's World by Joshua Gardner, he just like jumped up and he said, "Really? I love that book." In an interview, when this happens, it could go either way. It could be very good for you, very bad for you. And he asked me, "Did you read all of the other books?" And I actually did. So I didn't have to lie. I said yes, and he and I started talking about Gardner for at least 5 minutes, fervently. And I knew that moment that I was gonna get it. Anyway, my second book. Aww. Okay. Who hasn't read this book? I mean, who else loves old book smells? Can you see all the edges, how it's like brown around the edges? This is an old book. I've had it since elementary school, so oh my god. I really like Quentin Blake's illustrations in all of Roald Dahl's books. I really struggled between choosing this one and Matilda because I love Matilda, but it came down to this. I just love this book. It's a wonderful book. And actually, I grew up on Roald Dahl's books. What many people don't know is that he also writes for adults as well. There's a large collection of his short stories just for adults. And it's really fun. And they're very different from the children's books that he writes. They're a lot darker. And I recommend it to anybody who loves good fiction. Next one is actually an author, not a book. Shakespeare. I love every single thing that he has written. I also grew up reading all the Shakespeares. Some days I go for the tragedy, some days I go for the comedy, some days I go for the sonnets. My favorite sonnet is, of course, number 18, Shall I Compare Thee to Summer's Day? You can't talk English literature without referring to Shakespeare. Another one that I didn't bring today, Beatrix Potter. So right now I'm talking about the books that I grew up on. I love that book because the illustrations, the binding. I had a really thick, hardcover series of Beatrix Potter, and just flipping through them gave me a huge peace of mind. And I remember there was a TV series of Beatrix Potter, and it always started with Beatrix Potter, of course not herself, but the actress playing her, writing a letter on her beautiful desk, sealing it with wax, walking outside to the post office and mailing it. It was just very quaint, serene, English countryside vibe that I was not getting anywhere in Seoul, so I lived vicariously through the books. And whenever I want to feel that innocent childhood vibe, I go back to that book. Next one is also something that I didn't bring. Agatha Christie. I was going to say mystery books, thriller novels, but it was a whole genre, not a book. So I decided to narrow it down to Agatha Christie books. I love mystery novels. Ellery Queen, George Simenon, I love it. I love mystery books because you can't put it down. I love reading books that I can just focus on entirely from cover to cover. And mystery novels will do the job. So if you think that you want to get into the habit of reading, but you just can't seem to focus, I say go for the mystery novels because they will keep you hooked on it. Next one, Harry Potter. Yes. I think it's the only series where I had to literally line up in front of the bookstore. When a new book from the series was coming out, bookstores would take reservations. And I would sign up, and on the day of release, I would line up in front of the bookstore to be the first one to get the book. I would get the new book, find the nearest cafe, sit down in a comfortable couch, and read through until they closed. Get home on the last bus, finish that book 3-4 a.m. From book 4 on, it was really long. So I would read for at least 12 hours straight to thoroughly read that book. And I would stay away from the internet because people, bad people, evil people, would leave spoilers just anywhere. Like on a weather article or some movie news. In the comment section, somebody would go, "So Dumbledore died." And people would freak out. So I stayed away from the internet until I finished the book. And because the translations, Korean translations came out months later, everyone in my class would ask those curious ones, they would ask me how the book goes the next day. So yeah. My personal favorite is book 4 and book 1. Yeah, number 1 and number 4. Next one is Paul Auster, the New York trilogy. I love Paul Auster. He's one of the authors that made me feel really acquainted with New York even before I had been to New York. His proses are just really well written and it's very accessible and you're just going through the pages super quickly. Next one I did bring. Okay, where is it? Salinger. Franny and Zooey. Many people's favorite Salinger is Catcher in the Rye, but mine is Franny and Zooey. Also a little brown around the edges. Okay. This book puts me in a mood. Talks about the weekend of the Yale game, Franny and Zooey meeting up, having a club sandwich, an everyday life for college kids of this era. There are some writers who over-describe and over-explain and tire the readers out. And there are writers who write succinctly and they just get to the point, no frills. I tend to prefer the latter. But Salinger, when he goes on and on, it's never boring and it never feels excessive. Everything about this book is perfect. I can just flip it open, any page, and get into it immediately. Love this book. Okay, here's a big one. 536 pages. Umberto Eco, Name of the Rose. I love all his books, but Foucault's Pendulum, that one makes you go, okay, so you're a genius. Good for you. This one is a little more accessible. If you're intimidated by the thickness, go for the movie first. But the book is a lot better. The books are always better than movies. Oh, this is just beautiful. It's tougher than other books that I've introduced. Like, it's a lot tougher than Salinger and Auster to get into it. But once you are settled in to this world in this book, so the first chapters are a little challenging, but when you are settled in, it's pure bliss. Just trust me. And he is the author of one of my favorite essays. Hilarious, I love it. Ooh, this one I couldn't find. I love it so much. It's Scott Fitzgerald, Tender as Night. Again, some people's favorite Fitzgerald is Gatsby. I personally don't really like Gatsby because I don't like Daisy. If I don't feel for the main character in a book, I can't seem to love it. Yeah, just me. So I've read it. The writing is beautiful. I mean, it's Fitzgerald. But because I sincerely just don't like Daisy, I couldn't get into it as much as other people. But Tender as Night, it's one of the few books that made me cry as I was reading it because the sentences were so beautiful. I'm really into the Lost Beat generations, and he's definitely among one of my favorite writers. Quite different to the writer I'm going to introduce next. Fitzgerald's sentences are elegant, eloquent, and fantastic. Every word that he picks out and how he arranges them will make jaws drop. Next one. My favorite Hemingway is A Movable Feast. Okay, let me read you a sentence from it. If you're lucky enough to have lived in Paris as a young man, then wherever you go for the rest of your life, it stays with you. For Paris is a movable feast. If you're planning to go on a trip to Paris someday, you have to read this book. His life in Paris, in this book, is what every writer aspires to have. I love Hemingway because he gets to the point every single time. So there's no word unnecessary in any of his books. And when I was living in Paris, I carried this with me most days. I would just read one page of it. Even if I was super busy, I would at least read a sentence from this book, and it would make me feel so good. And I don't really like writing on the margins. I don't underline, but I don't really mind dog ears. Yeah, I do have some bookmarks, but I am not obsessed with keeping books clean. I don't use book covers. The edges are all frayed. Okay. Next one. Ooh, put this book in my bag and took it out last minute because it was so heavy. It's Gustave Flaubert, Sentimental Education. That book is also beautifully written. I just go for the aesthetics. Flaubert is one of the reasons why I decided to study French, because I wanted to read his work in the original version. I still haven't gotten around to that because my French is mediocre, but someday. And this, I have no words for this. You know how there are books where you get into it and you slowly fall for it? And there are books that will shock you from the first page. And this is one of those books. My Name is Red by Orhan Pamuk. There's nothing like this book in this world. This is a one-of-its-kind, unique masterpiece. And the minute I read the first page, I knew that this was something special. For some reason, I tend to go for like mint tea when I am reading this book. I want to sit on a beautifully woven carpet and read this book. This is definitely my favorite, but I really like all these other books. I also really like Museum of Innocence, and I know that there's an actual museum. Haven't been there yet. It's on my list. This is so exotic. The New York Times book review says it's chock full of sublimity and sin. That's exactly what it is. Ooh, I have it here. Somerset Maugham of Human Bondage. This is another book that made me cry because it was so good. The sentiment that you are left with when you are finished with the book, it stays with you for a while. And I was affected by it for quite some time. So if you need to feel happy and all bubbly these days, don't read it. They say that there's a lot of similarities between the main character and the author. He says it's not an autobiography, but it's an autobiographical novel. I left a bookmark with a postcard of Cafe Positano, which is in Positano. And now I miss it. I don't know why I took this book to Positano. I don't think I did. This book doesn't really go with... Oh, I did! There was one time I took this book, I read like a couple chapters and I put it down because it was so not right for a Positano vibe. But, okay. Number 15, already, is the book that I am currently reading now, which changes every day. And I really hope that your reading list, your favorite book list, always includes the book you're reading now. Never stop reading. All the books, no matter how good or bad they are, leaves you something. So your current book has to be on that list. I have a few runners-up, and number 1 on the runners-up list is this book. This is the heaviest book that I brought today. Gone with the Wind It's, how many pages is it? 1,037 pages. Do not be intimidated by the thickness because every single page is worth it. You have to read this book. It's beautiful. I mean, I don't really like reading historical fiction or period stories, but this one is, I can't describe how addicted I was when I was first reading this book. And I just couldn't let go. After finishing the last page, I couldn't let it go. And I went for the sequel, which is called Scarlet. I also have it at home. It's not as good as this one, of course, and it didn't pan out the way I wanted it to pan out because I was so rooting for Scarlet. But still, it was wonderful. And Washington Post says unsurpassed, which I wholeheartedly agree. This is just, it's a masterpiece. Another one on my runners-up list is Gentlemen, Moscow, Rules of Civility. I say those two are the fiction that I have thoroughly enjoyed recently. I also really liked the Napoli series. I don't read that many essays. I'm a hardcore fiction fan, but I do like David Sedaris. Other authors that I really enjoy include James Salter, Remy, Dickens, Woolf, Joyce, Bronte, and Borges. Yes. So there it is. My favorite books. I do have summer reading lists and Christmas reading lists, so I might make a few more of the book videos. So stay tuned and happy reading. Catch me on my next video.